Hi, my name is Rita and welcome to the MYCELIUM Skirt pattern instructions. I hope that you have as much fun doing this skirt as I did creating it, and I hope to see all of your creations soon. So please share it with me. If you have any doubts at all, you can reach me in the comments, through Etsy messaging, or through any of my social medias, and I will help you whichever way I can. And so let's do this. To show you how I assembled the patterns, I'm using a quarter scale. You can print them at home or at a copy shop. The only thing you have to keep in mind is to print it at 100% scale. Use the little square to check if your measurements are right. Also, this PDF has layers, which means that you can use a PDF reader to turn off the layers of the sizes you don't want to see, which makes it easier when you are cutting your patterns. Just make sure that you keep the base visible at all times, which is the information of the pattern, as you can see. For the sizes, it is very easy to choose your size. You have to guide yourself with the circumference of the waist or hip, whichever one is bigger, and your measurements will probably fit more than one size. This means that if you choose the smaller sizes, you will have less gathers, and if you choose bigger sizes, you'll have more fabric and more gathers. You can also print in A4 or US letter sizes. For these, you have to print at 100% scale as well. And to assemble the pages together, it's easier if you cut the top and left margins. I did the first one wrong, but I found it easier if we stick from the right to the left and from the bottom to the top. So you have to cut the top and left margins. Guide yourself with the numbers on the right top of each page. And here's how you organize the pages for the A4 and for the US letter. You can also see this on the written instructions. After attaching all the pages, you just need to cut your patterns. If you print the A0 document, you don't have as much work, but you still have to attach the front/back skirts patterns, like so, through the dotted line that says attach here. Besides all the previous information, you also have some patterns that say cut on fold, the grain lines to guide yourself as well, and also wavy lines that show you where you have to gather your fabric. For the front and back, which are overlapped to save paper, you have to cut only the bottom arch. And don't cut the semicircle on top, because we are gonna need the pattern like so. Here are all your patterns: the side gathers, the front and back gathers, the circle for the pockets, the top pocket, and the little cutout, as well as the waistband on top. To cut your fabric, you need to guide yourself through the selvage, which are on the length of the fabric. Usually, you match the grain line parallel to the selvage. like so. But in this case, because the skirt is pretty wide, if your pattern doesn't fit your fabric width, you can turn it 90 degrees. But if you do so, you also have to do this for all of the pattern pieces. On the pattern pieces that say to cut on fold, you just have to fold your fabric wrong sides together and put the folding line on top of the fold of the fabric. Then you just have to cut the 2 layers of fabric, and never forget to cut your notches. They are very, very important when you are sewing. As you can see, once you unfold the fabric, you have a symmetric pattern. For the front and back skirt patterns, you have to be a little bit more specific. You need to put 2 layers of fabric, wrong sides together, and cut only the bottom arc, and don't cut the little cutout on top yet. And as you can see, we cut it like this because the back pattern is mirrored. After this, you attach the front pattern only to the fronts that you cut, and you finish the bigger arc by cutting only that part. And for the back, you have to turn it wrong side up, and now you can finally cut that little cutout on top next to the waistband. And don't forget your notches. And here is the front and the back. Once you are sewing it, they are matching the side seams correctly. So let's start sewing. In this pattern, you have a lot of gathers to prepare. For example, these small cutouts, and together you have to lower your thread tension and increase the length of the stitch. Then you just have to stitch all along the side you want to gather. As you can see, the first part I locked the thread, and at the end I leave it so I can pull it at the end. And you do this twice, so you have 2 lines for gathering, which in my experience makes it a lot more stable when gathering. With the 2 threads you left hanging at the end, you pick the 2 top threads, so the ones on the top, and you start pulling your threads, which makes the gathers on the fabric. You have to do this process all along, and it helps if you see how much you need to gather, comparing it to where you are gonna sew, which is on the back little hole on the top. When you finish gathering that circle part of this pattern piece, you can then attach it to the back, matching the center notch. If you cannot find that notch between all the gathers, you just have to fold your pattern piece in half. And match it to the back cutout middle notch. When I attach them together, I already used the same color thread I use the white thread to gather so it's easier when I take it out. Now for the pockets. You have two pattern pieces for this pocket, the circle, which is the base and under pocket, and then the top pocket that is half a moon. And you have to do a small hem on the top of this pattern piece. As you can see, I folded 1 centimeter twice, but you can also use the notches to guide yourself, and you just stop stitch all along just like a basic hem. This hem works as a tunnel through which you are going to pass a tape with the final measurement of the pocket opening, which in this case is 21 centimeters. You can pass the tape through the tunnel with a specific tool like so, or you can also use a safety pin. As you're passing it through, make sure you don't lose the end of the tape. You have to stitch it through to make sure you don't lose it. Then you pass it all the way through, and at the other side you also stitch it down. As you can see, it's the fact that the tape is smaller than the gathering measurement that makes the gathers along the opening of the pocket. You can now arrange them as you like, spacing them out equally, and then you are ready to put it on top of the circle and use your notches to sew them together. Because we are then gonna sew the circle through the circle hole of the skirt, you just need to stop stitch it for now. If you want a more voluminous pocket, there is also a version 2 included in these patterns, which is marked with V2. This version is gathered not only on the top, like the version 1, but also on the bottom, which makes it a lot more voluminous and stand out from the skirt. To make this, just gather the bottom edge between the notches, just like you did in the small cutout, and then attach it to the pocket base V2, which is identical to the V1, just has 2 more notches to guide yourself with the gather's limits. And now for the front and back arc gathered panels. For this, you use the top notches, the ones that are closer together, to gather between them. So they are what limits the gathering. You start the process the same as I taught you before. You start by locking your stitch and then stitch all around until the other notch, in which you are gonna leave the thread longer. And do this twice because it makes the gather more stable. Then you pick up the top threads and you push them, as this is the way you can gather your fabric. You can also do this from middle to the notches, and I didn't do this now, but I did when I was gathering the side panel because it was wider. And as you are gathering these arcs, you have to go and match them to the cutout place they are gonna fit in. Otherwise, you'll have to then widen again your gatherings to match that between notches measurement. After this, you can finally sew them to the cutouts on the front and back panels and use the notches to guide yourself. As you can see, you have other notches right after the notches between the gatherings, as they are helping you to make that small curve there and keep your fabric exactly where it should be. And I sewed them from the middle till the ends as I found it easier, but you can do it either way. After you do this, do small cuts throughout the curved parts, as this helps your fabric to open easier. For the side seams now, because you have to attach them before the circles for the pockets and side gathers. And because my fabric is thicker, I decided to use bias tape to finish the skirt. You need to cut just a strap in 45-degree angle. You can also buy this already made, because I then had to fold it one time towards the middle and then fold it once again. After you have your bias tape, you attached it to each side, so you do the front and then the back separated, because it's better if you have an open seam when you are sewing the pockets, and otherwise it will be a lot of fabric all on top together. If you have a more fluid, softer or thinner fabric, you can also finish your seams with a French seam written. You can find how to do this in your written instructions. After you have finished it with the bias tape, you just have to attach the side seams normally, right sides together, sew it from the wrong side, don't forget this, and then you just open it with the iron, like so. Now you are ready to attach your pocket, which for me is the most difficult part of this skirt, because it's very difficult to sew circles. It's very important that you are always at the exact 1 centimeter seam allowance, otherwise you'll have your cutout or circle bigger, and you can end up making small errors like little pleats along the circle line or make it uneven. So I found it easier to use pins before, and you also have quarter notches, so on the top, on the bottom, on the left, and on the right of your circle. Do this process very slowly, and don't forget the 1 centimeter seam allowance has to be 100% correct on this one. If you for some reason catch more fabric than you should on one part, you can also go back and redo that part little by little. If you are patient, I promise you can do this. And yes, this took a lot of time. And this is how the pocket looks after you attach it all together. And now it's time for the side gathers, which, as I told you before, I did from the center to the sides to gather because this panel is a lot bigger, and this helps control the gathering equal for both sides. After this, the process is pretty much the same. Use the notches to guide yourself when sewing and just sew all around. I also use the bias tape to finish all the cutout seams and the arcs because this makes the garment much neater and with a better finishing, which just has a lot more quality to it, believe me. And finally, for the waistband. For this, you have to sew the sides of the waistbands together, but you have to leave one of the sides half open, just a little hole. And I forgot to do this, so I then had to go back and unstitch it. But it is very important that you do this when you are sewing so you can lock the threads on the extremities of this hole so it doesn't start to open. When you have your waistbands together, you can finally attach them to the bottom of the skirt through the notches as guidance. As you can see, on the back you have the 3 notches separated, which are supposed to match that small cutouts. You also have the side seams to guide from side seams of the skirt and side seams of the waistband. And on the front you have 2 notches that locate the center front. So you just have to stitch all around like so. It's pretty straightforward. After this, you'll have to top stitch the waistband down. You have 1 centimeter seam allowance to fold and then top stitch. You put the fold on top of the previous seam, and it's very helpful if you iron it down first, exactly how it's gonna be folded. So you don't even have to pin it, you just have to iron it and then top stitch it like so. Don't forget to hide the previous seam. And for the elastic, you can measure it by putting it around your waist, see how it would feel more comfortable, and maybe take in a few centimeters because the gathers do make it wider. And then you just have to pass it through the tunnel. As you can see, I used a safety pin as well. Pass it all around, which is not an easy process, I know. Make sure your elastic is not rolling around in there. And take them out through your previous hole, which you are gonna use to sew the elastic together. I only gave 1 centimeter seam allowance because I put that 1 centimeter on top of the other end of the elastic. And as you can see, I just stopped stitch it at 1 centimeter And I also use a zigzag stitch as it is easier with elastic to put it together. To finish the hole, you can sew it by hand, which I am not an expert at all. I usually just see how it goes, pass the needle from one side to the other, and go all around both sides together. And when you push it at the end, it closes. You can also just stop stitch it with the machine. You also have to do this to hold the elastic, but don't forget before to just widen as much the elastic and the skirt to make the gathers even, and only then top stitch. And it is required that you top stitch the side seams through the elastic to hold it in place, so that when you wear it from day to day, the elastic doesn't bend or roll inside and make it just uncomfortable. Now and truly, finally, it's time for the hem. It has a 3 centimeter seam allowance, and I folded 1 centimeter and then 2 centimeters, and I iron it, pressing it so that it's easier when I'm making the hem, like so. And here is your final skirt. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you wear it every day for now. And I hope at least you had fun doing it. Let me know how it went. And please, please share photos with me. Bye.